Imagine, before the first humans made history. Before civilization knew fire, the wheel, and language. This world was ruled by something never described in textbooks. Not dinosaurs. Not the ancient creatures we know. But something much older, bigger, more terrifying. A surprising discovery in the middle of a barren desert led a group of scientists to a secret that had long been buried in silence. A creature unrecorded in history, but left traces. What exactly did they find? And why did the earth tremble when the fossil was touched again? This story isn't just a theory. It's a warning. Watch until the end, and if you notice anything strange or have an opinion about this creature, let us know in the comments. Do you think this creature really existed? Or does it still exist? The desert sands burned under the hot sun, sweeping across the flat surface of the Nullarbor Plain in southern Australia. There were no trees. There was no sound. Only the wind rustled the gravel and dust, whispering ancient stories almost forgotten. Amidst the silence, a group of researchers from the Paleotrax project halted their steps. Before them lay a split limestone formation, opening a gap into a world hidden for millions of years. Professor Halim Razi, a 54-year-old senior paleontologist, crouched down. His eyes stared at the claw marks clearly etched into the rock wall, 3 long toes with a sharp sickle-like curve. They couldn't possibly belong to a dinosaur. They were too large. And even stranger, the prints were at a geological depth that shouldn't have harbored any hard-boned creatures at all. "Is this some kind of marine reptile?" asked Myra, a young research assistant on the expedition. Professor Halim shook his head slowly. "No, this isn't from the Mesozoic era. It's much older." As they advanced deeper into the rock crevice, the atmosphere changed. Cold. It was as if the air itself held the breath of something that had once lived. And waited. Deep in the passage they discovered something unexpected. A skull as tall as an adult human, yet shaped unlike any creature known to science. Its teeth were dagger-like, arranged in several rows. On the top of the head, there was a crown-like protrusion formed from solid bone. Suddenly Myra's headlamp flickered. Then it went out. Darkness enveloped them for 2 seconds that felt like 2 hours. When the light came back on, something had changed. The dust on the ground formed a circular trail. It looked like something was moving beneath them. "Professor," Myra whispered softly, "this place is unnatural." Professor Halim nodded. "This isn't just an archaeological find. It might be a warning." They decided to take the skull fragment to the research camp's laboratory. But even after scanning and carbon analysis, the results left them speechless. The fossil was estimated to be more than 540 million years old, an age when complex life had only just emerged. There shouldn't have been such a large predator. But the fossils were real. And the tracks were fresh. What they found wasn't just history. They may have awakened something. The night breeze rustled gently over the research camp. White tents stood neatly lined up among ground scanning equipment and solar power generators. The soft hum of radio communication filled the air, but the atmosphere remained silent. All eyes were fixed on the large screen inside the main tent, where the scans of the ancient skull were displayed. The image was almost unbelievable. The skull's structure suggested the creature had a dual respiratory system, like a predator of both sea and land. Its skeletal system pointed to incredible physical strength, capable of crushing a whale's bones with a single bite. But most surprising was the trace of magnetic energy surrounding the fossil, as if the bone were still active. Myra stood frozen. "This isn't just a fossil. It's like a vessel." Professor Halim turned his head slowly. "You understand what I mean, right? If this structure holds residual biological energy, then..." He stopped short. Outside, a motion sensor suddenly beeped. A warning light flashed red. All team members exited their tents, squinting at the dark desert. There was nothing there. But the sand was moving. A groove formed like the drag of a tail, or a giant body moving beneath the surface. Shortly afterward, 2 tents on the east side collapsed. Metal poles were uprooted as if swept away by an invisible force. Screams rang out. One of the technicians, Rafik, was gone. Only his communication device remained, crushed as if crushed by a giant hand. Fear spread among them. Professor Halim immediately gathered the team and ordered an evacuation. But Myra didn't join them. She stood in front of one of the stone walls they had excavated earlier that day, staring at the symbols newly revealed in the night light. "Professor," she said quietly, "look at this. These aren't human carvings. This is some kind of script." The symbols formed a circle. In the center was the silhouette of a creature with 2 long eyes and a gaping mouth full of fangs. Below it was written in ancient script, which, when transcribed, spelled out a single sentence. "The ruler before time. He will return." The echo of the night wind turned into a low, vibrating roar in her chest. Sand began to rise from the ground, forming a vortex at their feet. It was like the breath of something waking up. And deep within the earth, something opened its eyes for the first time in millions of years. The sky above the Nullarbor plain was pitch black, darker than a normal night. Clouds rolled silently, absorbing the starlight. A low rumbling could be heard beneath the earth, a subtle vibration that steadily increased in intensity, like a heart beating after a long sleep. The research team ran to the vehicle, but some of their equipment was already damaged, shaking from the ground. Myra, though terrified, remained by Professor Halim's side. She couldn't look away from the symbols on the stone wall. Something inside her felt like a calling. Meanwhile, in the center of the desert basin, the ground began to crack. A giant hole slowly opened, unlike any ordinary cave-in. Its edges formed a perfect circle, as if dug from beneath by something that knew exactly where it was. They witnessed it with their own eyes. A large, enormous shadow began to emerge from the crack. Not its entire body was visible, only the silhouette of its steel-scaled back, its eyes glowing faintly red, and the roar of its breath that shook the ground. The creature didn't move quickly, but each movement created ripples in the ground like a small earthquake. Professor Halim recorded everything with trembling hands. "This isn't just a prehistoric creature. This is an entity." The creature stood on its half-length, towering like a dark tower carved from ancient times. Around it, the desert fell silent. Even the wind stopped. Suddenly, it raised its head and let out a low, long roar. A roar inaudible to the human ear, yet felt deep in the chest. Animals for miles around instinctively fled. And in the Geological Disaster Monitoring Control Center, instruments detected an unknown subterranean frequency. Myra closed her eyes. She heard something in her head. Not a voice but an image. A memory that wasn't hers. Pieces of a world once shrouded in darkness. Lost continents, oceans turned to blood. And a being that ruled over everything long before humans knew fire. The creature wasn't just alive. It was part of this planet. "This creature isn't a predator," Myra whispered softly. "It's a guardian." But guardian of what? The creature turned, slowly sinking back into the crevice that had brought it up. It didn't rage. It didn't attack. Just emerged to watch. And to remember. As the ground closed over its body, and the sky slowly revealed the stars again, they knew one thing. This world didn't belong entirely to humans. There was something older, deeper, and more powerful, waiting silently.